I'm Tyler Rollins, Executive Director of Foundation for Spirituality and the Arts.
And I'm Laura Moffatt. I'm the Director of Art and Christianity. And we're here today in West London to meet with Shirazeh Houshiary, who is an artist that created a new window for the very historic and important church of St Martin's in the Fields in the centre of London on Trafalgar Square. In 2007, the process to make the work was obviously a year or two in the making.
It was actually opened 2008.
Okay, yeah. And do you remember what year the process started? Possibly.
Because I actually won this competition. It was a competition, yeah. So there were other people involved, and I won it. And then I remember it took 2 years because a lot of people were against it.
Yeah, the permissions take a while.
So to convince people, it's not an easy thing.
No, it's not, no. And I'm sure we'll come to that.
But then they changed their mind later on because they all loved it. This is life.
It's all good. So we wanted to begin really just by asking you about how you began to conceptualize the window when you saw the brief for the competition. What kind of approach did you take?
Well, the brief was quite complex because, St Martin's in the Fields, first of all, is a very historical and important church for the Anglican community because it's designed by James Gibbs. And this church has influenced many other churches, so it's a model church, so you can understand how difficult it is. And historically, I remember I think I read somewhere that in the First World War, where they had a lot of soldiers visiting the church, because it's very close to the station, to Charing Cross Station. So when the soldier came back from the war, they were wounded, they had psychological problems, and at that time, I think the Reverend was Dick Shepherd, and he opened the church and started looking after all these wounded soldiers. So it became a place where they could take care of the homeless, and it continued, and now they take care of the homeless. So it has a full congregation, unlike other churches, which they don't have hardly anybody going there. And it has a lot of tourists, and then and they have a concert as well, concert recital for music, which always gets full. So you can see this church is a very active church. And so it is a challenge to work for such an idea. How do you make something and which could appeal to people who are atheists, who are faithful, or different religion, different culture, different background, because many different people visit this church. And it had to appeal to all these people. It had to work during the day. It had to work with artificial light. It had to be present at all times. So I realized that the brief is so difficult and so challenging that I needed to really study this and find a way that I could communicate something which is universal. I wanted the image to be universal, yet it could actually connect to different people. So light was really the issue that I had. The window is about a light. This is the east window. It's the most important part of the church because it's above the altar. And it is, as physicist Krauss, his name is Krauss, he said once, we understand the world, the universe around us with light. If there was no light, we would not know the vastness of this universe. So the light is everything. And even in Genesis you have, at the beginning there was light. Then you have, light is the focus of everything we know about who we are. And it's even the physicists, through light, they learn about the cosmos. The movement of light has shown them how far something is, how close it is, and how this universe is made up. So light is everything. So I realized that I wanted to actually work with light. I have a very passionate interest with Zubran. Zubran is a painter that I've loved very much, and maybe it's because Zubran also works with light. He shows he reveals the truth through light. All his painting is about very strong light is always dark and light. This relationship between the two, it reveals the mystery of who we are. So this is maybe my passion for Zubron, and I have used Zubron in my work so many times. And I start looking at the Veil of St. Veronica by Zubron, which is one of the very important painting to me. And this painting has only been shown once in National Gallery. It's actually, this painting is in Sweden. There are many versions of it. There's a version which is in Spain, which he didn't actually paint the face. I'm not really interested in the story of, everybody knows the story, but what I was interested in the way that the face is revealed through the veil, as if the veil and the subject and object are not separated. The veil and the face are one. So in some way, also the position of the face is very fascinating, because then there is another painting that he did of the Veil of St. Veronica, which you can see the position of the face, which is this oval, which is just tilted. And this tilt is very important. And actually, Zubron showed me the tilt. It's quite fascinating. He showed me at the center of, because also, I mean, I have to go back to the building. James Gibb used a lot of oval. The ceiling is in oval shape. The windows both sides of the church are in oval. He actually used oval in the design of the building. And I knew that if I wanted to succeed to make something meaningful, it had to be sensitive to his vision as well, yet it had to be contemporary. I couldn't go back to 1722 and make something which, so it had to be contemporary. So it was, all this was challenge, and I was thinking a different direction that I could bring the ideas into focus today. So I used the tilted head. The moment I tilted the head, the warp and weft, because actually a window is a piece of cloth as well. It's not that different. It's created out of warp and weft. And so the moment I tilted the window, you had this movement. You have a movement that is so powerful, and I wasn't even aware of it. You see, sometimes these things do happen just by trying it. So when you tilt this, that tilt of the head create a twist at the heart of the universe. This, actually, so many physicists have told me, this is a twist that exists in the cosmos. Whether it's a black hole, yes, it is in the heart of the universe. It's the heart of the creation. This is so fascinating, but I didn't realize any of that, and by tilting it, that cross was created, which gives you a sense of vertical energy, which a lot of people saw agony of cross. And now I can see it, but at the time I didn't see any of this. I was just aware of there is a mystery in this movement. And then I learned later on that actually the movement is in the heart of creation. It's in the atoms, is in the small particle, is in the cosmos, it's everywhere. This is where it is. And so this was my universal, in a way, I touched something which is so universal and so much in our cells. It exists in our body, it exists everywhere, in our heart, in the movement of everything that we do, because that tilt creates a movement of spiral, which is at the heart of the universe, really.
What I do find so interesting with the Zubron is that you were kind of inspired by the positioning from his painting, yet both of you somehow were inspired, maybe intuitively, by this more cosmic, as you were talking about, kind of connectivity with the whole structure of the universe, but it's through this kind of artistic intuition rather than looking at being inspired directly by scientific texts or images of the stars. Would you say that the art is in some way a kind of chain of inspiration from one artist to the other?
Of course it is. I mean, an artist is inspired by everything, absolutely everything. It's not just art, it's also science. these are all a way to understand the mystery of who we are. You can't really ignore any of them. So a curious person, which an artist very often are curious people, they want to know through every avenue there is, whether it's science or whether it's art. Sometimes it's intuitive, sometimes the inspiration comes through a scientific knowledge. It can come through anywhere. I mean, science to me is not, as some people, I think we misunderstand science. I think science is as creative as a work of art. I mean, when I read Einstein, I think he is as a master of creativity as a painter would be.
And so he acknowledged the mysterious element.
It's about being free, number one, free and open. There's two things you need. The ingredients about being free and open. Very often children are, actually. And we lose it as adults because we grow up to become very rigid because we are controlled by society, by system, by education, by so-called civilization. So we lose that freedom. So you need that freedom and openness. And then the word is just a puzzle. A word is a wondrous place to be, and you just want to find out. Doesn't matter whether it's a science or a work of art, all of it, or it's a piece of music, everywhere, it's everywhere. The mystery is everywhere. And a child knows that, but somehow we lose that when we grow up.
So you feel that creativity somehow also comes from openness, rather than there's another model people think of as the egotistical creator doing something for myself, and then there's the more open.
There is openness. It's openness and freedom. Two things that are ingredients of being essentially human. And we lose them. And I've always been very sad. And you see that in children. Doesn't matter which culture they come from, where they are. They don't make judgment. They are open. They are free. And they're curious. They want to find out what the word is about. That's all. And that quality is the essence of creativity. And somehow we have to regain it when we grow up. That's what an artist or a scientist usually has. And I believe Einstein was as much as an artist as it is scientist, because he's open, he's free.
And also, I think growing to understand limitations and then the creative potential of limitations, whether as an artist with your particular medium, or perhaps even in this case with this being a commission from a congregation, as you say, which some could view potentially as a limitation, but for you it seems to have been a kind of opening to something so creative and appropriate to the space.
But limitation is part of universe as well. We are limited by gravity, let's say. We are limited by our skin, our body. We are limited by so many things. We want to open it up. We want to free it from those limitations, and we try to access something which perhaps is more primordial. Maybe it's the seed. And that's what I think I tapped in when I was doing the window. I was connecting to the seed, to something that is very universal and human.
What has sort of allowed you to have this sense of openness, or how have you been able to maintain that? Do you have a particular practice or orientation that...
I think being an artist requires, because you need curiosity. And curiosity is the beginning of everything. You need to be curious about everything, about the plant, the trees, the universe, the cloud, how everything. Why am I here? Why does universe exist rather than not existing? That in itself, you need a curiosity. You can't just go on and live without knowing why we are here. Why am I here? I mean, this is the biggest question.
For me, your window is almost like a kind of visualization of that very question. There's something so sort of elemental and not basic, but do you know what I mean? There's simple and elemental.
Very primal.
That it puts you in that spot where you might begin to think those questions.
Yes, it's very primal, because it really is like the seed. That's why I said light is that mystery. Light is everything, and it's true. I mean, light can reveal the invisible in a way. You walk into a dark room, you have no idea what it is. And very often we are in a dark room. And then you see a tiny bit of light. It reveals to you the depth and the space, the texture.
The window seems such a natural experience as the viewer, but I know there's a lot of technicalities that went into achieving this effect. I was wondering if you could just describe a little bit about how you were able to create this feeling of luminosity.
Okay. The center of it was the oval, which was tilted. So the moment the tilt happened, there was a distortion in the warp and weft of the window, the structure of the window. And that distortion is what I was saying, it's very powerful. It created that vertical energy which people saw in it, the agony of cross. So the web is made out of, which holds the pane of the glass, is made out of shot pin stainless steel. And it's a T-shape. So it's in one side it has more physicality, in the other side it becomes less, it becomes ethereal. And then the pane of the glass, because Gibbs didn't use the transparent glazing, mouth-blown transparent glazing, that was part of his vision. So we wanted, I felt that it was so important to respect his vision, that it should be monochromatic. We couldn't really use stained glass or color or anything like that. So I used the lighting up because I wanted to create the effect of three-dimensional experience when you sit in front of that window. So I used a lot of marking of my own paintings, and I etched the glass both sides, both front and the back, and they're slightly unaligned. So it was filled with white flocks, and then it was baked. And then when the light can move between these two marking, light can actually gives you a sense of three-dimensionality. So the window now becomes three-dimensional rather than being a flat experience. And so in the daytime, when you look at the window, you feel like you're seeing the particle of dust. And in the afternoon, the light changes. The light changes those experiences. It feels as if you're looking at a reflection of the cross in the water. So it's changing from dust, the earth, to water by afternoon. And I knew that in the evening it needed to be still, have a luminosity and resonance. So I etched the oval, and I filled it with a white enamel, white flocks. And then I used two projectors, which is hidden in such a way that nobody knows where the light comes from. And we masked the oval, so you could only project the light into the oval. No, it doesn't spill out. So you're not even aware of there's a projector there. That was very important. It's like a mystery. Light is a mystery. And I wanted that mystery to be experienced. You know, when people are sitting in a concert, as the daylight slowly fades, this slowly comes into become luminous. This transition, it's not like putting something on and off. It's a whole transition, just as you see the dusk. How many different lights you have from day to night. The light is changing continuously. You suddenly become aware of all those little nuances and the mood and the feeling that that window projects.
What I think is so important is people are seeing the light, the natural light and its transformation, but it's also through literally your vision and the way you have transformed the light in such a way that your vision and the natural light is sort of fused into one, and we experience those as one kind of inspiration, the artist and the natural sort of together.
Yes, it is. It was very important for the light to be natural, not to look like artificial lighting. That was not the aim. And in fact, sometimes when I look, especially when you look from outside, when you go to Charing Cross Station and when you come out of the station and you see it from outside, it feels like a moon hanging in the center of the church. It suddenly floats, which is quite unusual. It doesn't feel like it's been lit. And that was the quality that we worked with the glass people in Munich. They helped us a lot. And I had a lighting designer too. I use expertise of many people. And also my own husband, who is an architect. So we worked all of it. This is not an easy thing. I mean, it looks simple, it looks very powerful, but it's actually very difficult to. The simpler you are, the more natural you are, the more difficult it is to achieve.
I wondered if you'd worked on glass or with glass before?
Not really. And now I have done a lot of work. I'm just about to do a big, huge, another project with glass and stone in the center of London. So I mean, this is 18 years ago. At that time, no, it was the first time. But since then, I have worked a lot with glass.
Yeah. The etching process seems so right in a way with your, the way you use those very fine schemes.
Yes, it is, because it is, my own work is about consciousness, is about breath, is about the things that are invisible about us, because you see shapes, you see people, but what you don't see is what I'm interested in. This is maybe why I'm interested in Zubron, about the things that we don't see. And those are who we are. Our identity is not on only the things that we see and is obvious. Our identity is much more deeper. It's our consciousness, it's our breath, it's life, it's so many things. So I want to bring all that onto the surface of my work. So it does require the subtlety and nuances of experience. So yes, I mean, it is to do with the fragility of the marking, which is like a breath, something that just, if you don't breathe, you're not here. It's so simple as that. Yet you're not aware of it.
I think another unique thing about the siting of the work is it's something that people are going to be spending potentially hours looking at, whereas unfortunately, often the art experience now, people might spend 15 seconds looking at a painting or darting in and out of a gallery, whereas this is something that people can evolve and grow with through their own lives over the years.
It is very true, and that is maybe why in ancient time, in previous centuries, art was in churches very often. I mean, in most of the Renaissance artists, you can see them all in churches. Originally, they were in churches. Now they're taken out, or when you go to Spain, for example, in Seville, when you see Zubron, they were all in churches and monasteries. They were not really made to go into the museum for 15 minutes. No, that was not how it was done. And it is that part of humanity that and of course I was very fortunate to be asked to do this window in some ways, because yes, it has that quality still, and also having concert there helps a lot, because a lot of people wouldn't go perhaps into the church if there was nothing else happening, but because they have concert and they have very fantastic programs, so people go there and they spend an hour or 2 hours listening to music, and how wonderful it is that they can also enjoy the experience of the window. So what I'm saying is, yes, it is a very special commission, basically. I mean, we don't get that very often. Usually everything we do is very fast.
Yeah. And if perhaps we could just mention as well that following the window, you were also commissioned to make a new altar that sits below the window. And I wondered just if you could talk a bit about how that was really quite a different kind of commission. It's a sort of functional object in the church, really, and it's tactile, and it's, it has a different kind of presence.
Yes. Well, when I was asked to do the altar, I started searching to understand what does altar means, because I mean, without knowing what altar is, I mean, how can you make one? So I wanted to learn. So I made a lot of trips. I went to Italy. I went to different places, and there is I saw the Last Supper of Andrea del Castagno. I don't know if you're familiar with that painting. Is in Florence, and it's a very powerful painting. I have an image of it somewhere, but it is a painting that you have got the Christ and all his followers one side, and you have Judas the other side. It's massive. I mean, it's like when you stand there, the chapel it's just this fresco. There's nothing else, just this fresco, and there's a table with that Tuscan white cloth that is on it that is separate the space. So you feel that you are on the side of Judas, which is quite I mean, it actually really is very powerful. When you stand in that space, you feel like there's something very difficult about this experience, and you don't, because your position is like being on a stage and you are acting. So the painting becomes almost like the participant in the space. So when I saw that, I just felt that was very powerful, and I wanted the altar to really resonate intimately with people. I didn't want it to be something historical, something that it's, we know what altar is a table, is a sacred table, but I wanted something that it has a life. And then I realized that I was looking for the stone. We thought about the Travertine. Travertine was a very right stone for this, because it's like a body. So the altar is a body in some ways. And so the Travertine has got the wound by sediment. So I went to Italy, and this is actually the Travertine osso, which is the color of the bone, and comes from Rome. So we seek this stone, and it took a long time to find the right stone. It's not any old stone. So I wanted nature to make that transition. Just as the window, it has a natural quality. I wanted the altar to be natural. So the stone speaks. So the wound, actually, if you look very carefully in front, it's almost like the body is embedded in the sediment. And the wound is the cut. I mean, you have to look very carefully, is the cut in the stone. So there is a natural wound. And then I hollowed it out. The stone was hollowed out completely. And the top of it was made very thin, almost like the skin. I wanted it to feel like the body, because that's what altar is the body. So I made the top of the altar as thin as the skin. And then I had the light, which almost reflects the light of the window from inside. But this light is more intimate. So only the people who go to receive the wine and the bread, they're going to see this. It's that intimate, because it's something about the body and the inside and the outside, and the relationship between the two. And so most of the people from outside, they don't see it. So only the priest, which is performing the ritual, and the people who receive it, they are aware of this light. And I think that intimacy for me, was what altar suggested. And it's obviously the altar is floating on a piece of wood, which is similar to the church furniture, and that gives it a floating quality. So it's not really solid it's just like the body, it's weightless. It's floating on the above.
I think particularly with this window, or anything that's perceived as a permanent installation, that there's a sense that your creative gesture in making it is somehow continued, the creativity continues on in a way that we feel that going there, that a sense of your creativity and the natural light and the materials, but it still has a creative potential, I think, for the experiencer, the viewer, in other words, it doesn't just stop when you finish the work.
No, this is all work of art at their best, if they're all worth anything, would do that. They would not stop. They would inspire you forever. That's why we look at the past. Why do you think we look at the past? I don't quite understand what was the century that Zubeiron lived. It's very different from my time, completely. I mean, he had to deal with different problems, different, and I respect that. And some people see it just as a Catholic religious painting, and that's it, and they close it. But if you really open yourself and see it as a work of art, as something that is not just narrative, that's what I'm trying to say. It's bigger than a narrative. Narrative very often takes everything from us. We have become so involved with the narrative that we forget about the essence of things.
And I love how that particular work, just to go back to the context, it's so universal, but it's also you've so incredibly grounded it in the space and the sensitivity to the original architect's intentions and to the uses of it. So it's actually very much grounded in a space, but it also is incredibly universal.
Oh, it's grounded also in a church, because it's the agony of a cross. I mean, you couldn't get more grounded. You can see it like that too. I mean, that is also there. It's all there, but that is also universal. I've taken that image and shown the universal vision of that.
In order for people to be affected by art, though, they have to be open to it. Maybe also, do they need to have a contemplative experience with your art, or everything now is so quick, but what kind of attention do we need?
It's very difficult for me to say. Everybody has their own private way of making. Relationship is like a friendship. Different people make friends in a different way. We are not all the same. I don't expect the whole world to be the same. That would not be what I'm saying. So when you make a friend in a different way. And a work of art is alive as well. So you make a friendship with it. You make a friend. And, I have to do the same, in fact. And that relationship is very powerful. It's like a relationship you make with your friend.
Well, I certainly think that we can feel that with the window as well, that it sort of can become part of your experience of the world. So sitting there and interacting with the light and the space, it really just creates almost a all-encompassing artwork experience.
Yes, it is a universal image. That's how I've seen it. It is completely at ease with the universe, and it allows the viewer to become part of that experience.
Well, thank you for letting us become part of your studio and your morning. It's really been just a fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Very generous.